Okay, the recording has begun. This afternoon, we are going to focus on using a particular element of Teams. Previously, we've looked at the whole of Teams, but we are now going to home in on one part. We're going to look at the assignments section of Teams, and the assignment section is going to be something that could be used in various ways, but we've had previous webinars where we looked at OneNote class notebook. And what I'm going to do is share my screen with you, and we'll have a look at how those assignments can become quite useful just in school teaching, or you could be using it for a homework tool, or you could be used for distance learning as well. So we'll have a look at those creating assignments. We'll then have a look at the associated grade books, and we'll discuss remote learning using Teams and also face-to-face learning using Teams and how and where assignments might fit in. If anybody's got any questions today, feel free to pop them in the chat on the side, and then I'll come back to them at the end. Or also there'll be an opportunity to unmute your mics, and then we'll go through and answer any questions that anybody has. So let me pop over into Teams itself. It's going to refresh my Teams. Just going to stop sharing when I put a password back in. Almost there. Right, just reshare with you. Let's sign itself out because I wasn't very active for a while. Okay, just reshare my screen. So you see, you've got various teams. We're going to focus on class teams. When you come to make teams, you need to make sure that your class teams are the ones you're using for teaching and learning. So when you go to make a team, you'll get various options, and some of this might be done by your consultant, and otherwise you might be making them manually. You need to choose this one on the left here. This is the one that gets built for classroom use, and it has assignments in it. If you choose any of the other three teams, you won't get the assignments features that we're discussing today. It's going to pop back to the teams. So I go into my demo team. We've already looked at posts, files, and OneNote class notebook in previous webinars. Those recordings are available on the customer portal. So if you want to turn on customer, you can go to where you log your support tickets. There'll be a section called teaching and learning, and then in there you can pick up the previous videos. We are this afternoon going to focus on assignments. So in the assignments section, you've got some assignments that I've made previously. You can see the ones that are assigned, and you can view even more assignments once they've passed their due date, but it will automatically minimize them in Teams so you don't get too much of a long list. Any that are in draft would appear there. I don't believe I've got any in draft at the moment. Oh no, I have got a few in a draft. I've got some untitled assignments there. I've got 11. And then down the bottom, any that have been marked and returned, which I have been very slack, would appear at the bottom. So you can keep track of your mark book. This is a teacher view at the moment. So you would see that. If you were coming in as a pupil, you would just see the assignments that you've got to hand in, and then they would disappear after you've handed them in. But you can get feedback from your teacher and you can view them afterwards. So if I go create, we can either use an existing assignment. So if we are coming into the second year of using Teams, we can start to upcycle some of the assignments that we've already created. You could also use this to make a quiz. So that links into Microsoft Forms, and quizzes could be to check prior learning, or it could be to consolidate what somebody has learned or a class has learned from a topic or a subject you've already taught. And that opens up Microsoft Forms, and then you build a quiz in Microsoft Forms. We're going to focus on the assignments this afternoon. So you click on assignments, you get a title for your assignment. So it might be that we are going to call this solids, liquids and gases. And then the instructions are explain what state of matter each object is in. And I'll find a picture where we attach it here. In that could be the simple instruction. If you also need to add resources, it may be that add a sheet with some pictures on. You click the Add Resources button. By default, it will look in your OneDrive because Microsoft encourages you to keep your files in the cloud. OneDrive is like a USB stick, but in the cloud. It's your personal area. It's accessible only to you unless you decide to share something out of it, and that's where your files will be stored. But if you are going to use a notebook, you can add it in here as well. You can also pick it up from a team if you've already got a resource in a team that you want to link to, or you can upload from your device. And if you press upload from your device, in there then comes your files on your computer. So I'm just going to come out of that one and cancel out of it because I'm not actually going to attach anything today. You can also assign points. Points can be anything from 1 to 100. So I'm going to specify there's 20 objects to identify with the correct state of matter, 1 point for each, and I'll include that then there is 20 points available in total. You can also add something called rubrics. Rubrics are an American term, but effectively it works a bit like learning objectives and success criteria. Here's some I've already made for other subjects, but today I am going to create my new rubric. So the title might be States of Matter. And my description is particles in states of matter. And then down here where it says excellent, good, fair and poor, I might decide this is going to be my challenge level. So it might be mild, spicy, hot and extra hot. This could be levels of success. It's up to you how you want to use it. And then in here, I would give a description of what I'd expect to see. So it might be that some particles are drawn, or all particles are drawn, and then it could be that particles are drawn correctly and compared to another, and so forth. And you give your overall description there, and here are your success criteria, and then you attach it to your assignment that's been created. You can also have additional points here for the rubric too. So you can see here the points are then in as to how many points you get depending on which level you get to in the rubric. So I'm going to attach that, and then my rubric is in there. There's my state of matter rubric. If I decide I don't want it, I can get rid of the cross and I can always go about it, add another one in, or I can create one again from scratch. You decide which class team you're going to assign it to. So here I've got 2 class teams. I've got a secondary one and a primary one. If you're in your school and you teach across more than one class, maybe you're in a support role, you will be able to assign once, and the assignment can then go out to multiple classrooms. If you were using this across year groups as well, you could assign across the classrooms in the different year groups, as long as you are an owner or a member of those. You can choose also to add it to all the pupils in your class, or you can just have a selection of pupils, and you can choose the students, or you can have all of the students. So it might be that you have all, that's the whole class, or it could be that we have Henry and we have Susanna, and they are the ones that I decide to put in there. So there's my 2 students I've selected. So it's also really useful if you wanted to set a homework or a challenge or some sort of catch-up intervention using assignments. It's all possible. You then have a date when you want it to be due in. So I'm going to set my due date for Friday, the end of the week, and I would like it to be in by 3 o'clock on Friday. And then down here, you can just choose where you want to post it. So I'm going to pop this into the general channel because I only have the general channel. If I had more channels than just the general channel on my class team, then I'd have other options available here. We don't tend to have more than just a general channel in class teams because most of the work dividing up the channels will be done through the OneNote class notebook, and that's covered in other webinars. Then you can either save it when you can come back and edit it later. So maybe you've got an additional resource to get, you need to speak with a colleague, check if you're team teaching or you've got a shared role, or you can just go ahead and assign it. So I'm just going to assign that there. And then down here, I've got solids, liquids and gases. Underneath is the due date. I can, after a while, then it's provisioned. I'll find out how many have handed it in and how many I've reviewed out of the ones that have been handed in. So you can see here, I haven't got a particularly good success rate of getting work in from my pupils. Linked to that, once I've created it, I can go to my grade book. Just before I do, if I went into things like the STEM challenge, I can see in here then afterwards, I've got all of my pupils that have it assigned. I can see if anyone's viewed it or if they've handed it in or it's not handed in, and I can give feedback to those pupils in here. So that's one-to-one feedback. So Sydney might be for the STEM challenge. Please go back and read, and let's say check stage 2. Not particularly useful in the way of feedback, but gives you an example of what you could put in there. You can also give them a score as well. So I might say that they got 10 marks out of that. And then that can go back across to the pupil and they'll understand where they are. How that appears as a student, because I was in a teacher view there, that is the pupil view. So you can see it's a lot more simplistic. If they clicked on the assignments tab and they looked at their assignment, they would see the end version, the nice version with the title. Here is my description. I decided here the description was enough, so therefore I didn't need a rubric because I was just wanting the one explanation and 50 points available. So you don't always have to have a rubric in your assignments. You can go back in and edit any of those assignments anytime as well, and you can click edit assignment up there and it will allow you to go back into the same view we had before. You could also export what you've given in the way of feedback and marks out to Excel. So if you need to put it into an internal progress tracking system or a different MIS system, you can get that out on a spreadsheet and you haven't got to copy and paste it out one by one, which can be a bit of a headache. After you've created your assignments, you will end up with an online mark book. So it depends how you prefer to work, whether you want to still use a paper-based mark book or whether you want to keep it all up here, whether you run a separate spreadsheet. Here's my solids, liquids and gases. If it was my student at the bottom there and this was at the due in date, I would have it unlocked, which would look a bit more like this one over here. The reason I can't enter anything there is because we haven't hit the due date. Once it hits the due date, I might say that Sydney on the STEM project for planes got all 20 points available. It was a perfect submission. That puts the points in there. But if I wanted to see the work that they handed in, they return back to me. I go to open student work. Sydney in reality didn't hand anything in, but it would appear here. So you would see the file or the OneNote, and that would all be there for you to view. And then you can also give your feedback there, and you could change your points over here too at the same time. And when you press return, it sends the feedback from the homework that they've submitted, the assignment, directly back to them. So they then receive it back to them. It's personal to you and them. It doesn't get displayed to the rest of the class, but you're able to give feedback. So it might be what they've done really well, and it could be they're even better if, what they need to do to improve, or it could be that you link them out to an extension task to challenge them, or if they've really truly not understood what was required and you can see there's a gap in their learning, you could direct them to a resource in the feedback. I often do that. Go and check this out, particularly with a distance learning situation. It might be a website where they are going to go in and they're going to get some sort of support either from a video or another task where they walk through it, and then they can come back and have another go at the assignment and resubmit it if they wish, or it might be that they just need to go and do that as the follow-up. All right, let's close that down. Just like before with assignments, you can export that to Excel. So if I click export to Excel, it downloads to my computer. Then if I opened it up it would come, and I can see here, here's the forename, here's the surname, this is the email address of the pupil, there was the assignments and what I gave them. So there's nothing in there, but you can see you got 20 points in there. The feedback, if I'd left any feedback, would appear next to it. So you've got your written feedback, such as there, please go back and do it, or great job, you can use loops in your coding. And then you could bring it in. In the long term, Microsoft are revamping assignments, and they're also revamping gradebooks as well. So the assignments and the gradebooks will get an upgrade very soon in Teams. Grades will become a lot more open, so you can have numerical values, but you can also have letters in there too. So it doesn't have to be just out of 1 to 100. There's going to be a lot more flexibility, and also that feedback view there, when you go to open student work, is going to have more options down the side where you can just break it down. Instead of being feedback, you can have different boxes, such as the great, what they met from the success criteria, what they didn't, and it's all split out in individual rather than this one big version that you've got now. The other thing that will eventually come is assignments will get revamped. So instead of it being this sort of view, there'll be a lot more options when you come to set assignments. So if I went into metaphors and similes and I went back into edit assignment view, so we can see in metaphors and similes, it comes out to the BBC Bitesize pages, there'll be a considerable amount of options in here beyond what we've currently got. You'll be able to add more resource types into here. So the resource types at the moment are open to there, but there'll be directed resource types such as bring a video in and so forth. And the rubrics are going to have more options on them too. So you can scale the rubrics, because at the moment it's stuck with 4 criteria, but you could bring it down to 1 or 2, or you could add more to it and so forth. As far as this afternoon is concerned, those were the 2 main areas we were showing you in this mini webinar. It's assignments and grades, and all the other areas have been covered in previous webinars. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm really happy to answer any questions if you want to put them into the chat. And I can see there's a couple over there at the moment, or if you'd like to unmute your mic and ask anything at the same time. So the first question from Head at St Paul's is, do you have to use the points feature on every assignment? No, you don't. You could leave the points box blank, and you don't then have to use any points whatsoever. So it could be that. And then with that in mind, they just need to respond in the text-based form. They could resubmit a document. They can turn in the file or whatever's associated, and it doesn't have to be a judgment, numerically based or anything else like that. That was the only question in the chat. So has anybody else got any questions they wish to ask? Anybody used assignments in their own school or tried using the gradebook and have any feedback to share with anybody else that's on the call? Okay. I will remain in here for a little bit, and I'm quite happy to speak to people individually if they've got a question that's more specific to their school and they want to ask it in front of the group. We will be continuing the webinars this week. So we've got another webinar, but for Google later in the week. And then following that, next week, we are picking up on another aspect of Office 365 and Teams. You can sign up for them in the same way. The Turn It On consultants will send emails out, and then in there will be the links to join these webinars. And you're more than welcome to come along, regardless of whether you've got Office 365 or G Suite. So that leaves me just to say thank you for coming along this afternoon, and I wish you all a successful afternoon, and I will speak to you very soon.